It was a bright and sunny morning at the bustling city airport. People hurried past each other, dragging suitcases, checking their watches, and clutching boarding passes tightly in their hands. Among them stood Marcus, a 12-year-old boy with big dreams and an even bigger smile. Today was special for him. It was his first time flying alone. Marcus had been looking forward to this trip for weeks. His father lived in another city, far away from where Marcus stayed with his grandmother. They didn't get to see each other often, so every visit felt like a celebration. This time, Marcus's dad had promised to take him to a science museum and treat him to his favorite pizza. Just thinking about it made Marcus's heart race with excitement. His grandmother, Mrs. Adams, walked beside him, holding his hand firmly but gently. She was a kind woman with gray hair tied neatly into a bun. Despite her warm smile, she couldn't hide the slight worry in her eyes. "Now, remember everything I told you," she said softly, patting his shoulder. "Stay close to the staff if you need help, and don't talk to strangers." "Yes, Grandma," Marcus replied confidently. He patted the pocket of his jacket, making sure his ticket was still there. It was neatly folded, just as he kept it since printing it out the night before. The thought of losing it hadn't even crossed his mind. He checked it over and over again that morning. As they approached the gate, the crowd grew thicker. Passengers lined up, chatting among themselves or scrolling through their phones. Some looked impatient, while others seemed relaxed, ready for their journey ahead. The flight attendant standing near the entrance caught Marcus's attention. She wore a crisp uniform and carried herself with an air of authority, but something about her demeanor felt distant, almost cold. Mrs. Adams stopped just short of the line and knelt down to meet Marcus's gaze. "You'll be fine, sweetheart," she reassured him, though her voice trembled slightly. "Your daddy will be waiting for you when you land. Call me as soon as you reach, okay?" "I will, Grandma," Marcus promised, hugging her tightly. For a moment, he wished she could come with him, but he knew this was part of growing up. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward and joined the queue. The wait wasn't long, but it felt endless to Marcus. He shifted from one foot to the other, clutching his backpack straps nervously. When it was finally his turn, he approached the flight attendant with a polite smile. "Hi," he said shyly, extending his ticket toward her. The flight attendant barely glanced at him. Her focus was on her phone, which she held in one hand while absently scanning tickets with the other. When she did look up, her expression was blank, almost disinterested. She took the ticket from Marcus and gave it a quick once-over. Then, without warning, her brow furrowed. "This doesn't look valid," she announced abruptly, her tone sharp and dismissive. Marcus blinked, startled. "What? No, it is. I printed it last night." But the flight attendant didn't listen. Instead, she shook her head and muttered something under her breath. Before Marcus could protest further, she tore the ticket in half right in front of him. The sound of ripping paper echoed in his ears, leaving him stunned and speechless. For a few seconds, Marcus simply stood there, staring at the shredded pieces of his ticket in disbelief. His cheeks burned with embarrassment as nearby passengers turned to look. He wanted to cry but fought hard to hold back the tears. What had he done wrong? Why wouldn't she believe him? Seeing her grandson's distress, Marcus stood frozen, his heart pounding in his chest. His ticket, the one he had carefully printed and double-checked, was now nothing more than two torn pieces of paper in the flight attendant's hand. The sharp sound of the ripped still echoed in his mind, louder than any words she could have said. He felt small, embarrassed, and utterly powerless. His grandmother, Mrs. Adams, wasn't about to let this go unnoticed. Her face flushed with anger as she stepped forward, her voice firm but trembling slightly. "How dare you tear up my grandson's ticket without even checking it properly?" she exclaimed, pointing at the crumpled remains in the woman's hand. "This is unacceptable behavior." The flight attendant barely looked up from her phone, which she continued to scroll through despite the confrontation. "Ma'am," she said coldly, "I already explained. This ticket isn't valid. Rules are rules." "But you didn't even scan it or confirm anything," Mrs. Adams argued, her hands gesturing wildly. "You just tore it up without giving him a chance to explain." By now, a small crowd had gathered around them. Passengers waiting in line whispered among themselves, some shaking their heads in disapproval while others simply watched curiously. A few glanced sympathetically at Marcus, who stood silently beside his grandmother, tears welling up in his eyes. He wanted to disappear, to sink into the floor and never come back up. "Look," the flight attendant said, finally putting her phone down with an exaggerated sigh. She crossed her arms over her chest and fixed Mrs. Adams with an icy glare. "If there's a problem, take it up with customer service. I'm just following protocol here." Mrs. Adams opened her mouth to respond but paused when she saw the defeated look on Marcus's face. She placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, trying to shield him from the growing tension. "Come on, sweetheart," she murmured softly. "Let's find someone who can help us." As they turned away, Marcus couldn't help but glance back at the flight attendant. She had already moved on to the next passenger, completely unfazed by what had just happened. To her, it seemed like just another routine task, a minor inconvenience easily brushed aside. But for Marcus, it felt like something much bigger. It felt unfair, hurtful, and deeply personal. They walked a few steps toward the customer service counter, but before they could get far, a deep voice interrupted them. "Excuse me," the voice said firmly. Both Marcus and his grandmother turned to see a tall man in a sleek navy blue suit approaching them. His presence commanded attention, his piercing gaze locked onto the flight attendant, who suddenly looked uneasy. The man held out his hand toward Marcus. "Young man," he said kindly, "may I see your ticket?" Marcus hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do. Finally, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the torn pieces of paper, handing them over reluctantly. The man examined them closely, his expression unreadable. Then, without saying a word, he turned to the flight attendant. "Why did you tear this boy's ticket?" he asked, his tone calm but laced with authority. The flight attendant blinked, caught off guard by the question. "Sir, she stammered, fumbling for an explanation. It appeared invalid. "I was just doing my job." "Doing your job?" the man repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Do you always assume a ticket is invalid without verifying it first? Or is it that you judged this young man based on appearances rather than facts?" The flight attendant's face turned red. Whether from embarrassment or frustration, it was hard to tell. "That's not fair," she protested weakly. "I handle dozens of passengers every day. Sometimes mistakes happen." "Mistakes," the man countered sharply. "Tearing up a child's ticket in front of everyone isn't a mistake. It's unprofessional and unacceptable, especially when you didn't bother to check if it was actually invalid." By now, the entire gate area had gone quiet. Passengers stopped pretending to ignore the scene and openly stared, eager to see how this unexpected drama would unfold. Even the other airline staff members nearby seemed uneasy, exchanging nervous glances. The man turned his attention back to Marcus, his stern expression softening. "Don't worry, son," he said reassuringly. "We'll fix this right away." Marcus nodded, though he still looked unsure. He didn't know who this man was or why he was helping him, but something about his confident demeanor gave him hope. Maybe things weren't as bad as they seemed. Meanwhile, the flight attendant tried one last time to defend herself. "Sir, I really think we should move on. There's a plane to board, and delays won't help anyone." The man's jaw tightened, and for a brief moment, he looked ready to say something cutting. But instead, he took a deep breath and replied calmly, "You're absolutely right." As Marcus and his grandmother followed the man in the navy blue suit, whispers rippled through the crowd behind them. Passengers exchanged curious glances, wondering who this confident stranger was. Some speculated that he might be a high-ranking official or someone important within the airline, but no one knew for sure. All they could see was the authority with which he carried himself, commanding respect without raising his voice. The man led Marcus and Mrs. Adams to a quiet corner near the boarding gate, away from prying eyes. He turned to face them, his expression softening as he knelt slightly to meet Marcus's gaze. "Are you okay, young man?" he asked gently, his voice warm and reassuring. Marcus nodded hesitantly, though his eyes still glistened with unshed tears. I think so," he stammered. "But why did she tear my ticket? I didn't do anything wrong." The man sighed deeply, his brow furrowing with concern. "You're right. You didn't do anything wrong," he said firmly. "What happened back there was unacceptable, and I promise you it won't go unnoticed." Mrs. Adams stepped forward, her voice trembling with a mix of gratitude and lingering frustration. "Thank you for stepping in, sir," she began. "But who *** you exactly? And how can we trust that this will be resolved? The man smiled faintly, then straightened up to his full height. For a moment, he glanced around at the bustling airport before turning his attention back to them. "My name is Elijah Carter," he said calmly, "and I own Skyline Airlines, the airline operating this flight." Both Marcus and his grandmother froze, their eyes widening in disbelief. "Why, you were the owner?" Mrs. Adams gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Oh my goodness." Elijah nodded, his expression serious but kind. "Yes, I am, and let me assure you, what happened today does not reflect the values of this company, or of me personally." He paused, looking directly at Marcus. "I'm truly sorry for how you were treated, son. That shouldn't have happened, and I intend to make it right." Marcus blinked, unsure of what to say, his mind raced with questions. Was this really happening? Could this man, this powerful CEO, be helping him? It all felt surreal, like something out of a movie. Before anyone could respond further, Elijah turned his attention to the torn pieces of Marcus's ticket still clutched in his hand. Carefully, he examined them once more, piecing them together like a puzzle. After a few moments, he nodded to himself. "This ticket is perfectly valid," he announced confidently. "There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Whoever told you otherwise was mistaken or careless." Hearing those words lifted a weight off Marcus's shoulders. For the first time since the incident, he allowed himself to breathe a little easier. Maybe everything would turn out okay after all. Elijah then gestured toward the nearby counter where other airline staff members were assisting passengers. "Let's get you reissued a new ticket immediately," he said. "And while we're at it, I'll personally ensure you and your grandmother are seated comfortably on the flight." Mrs. Adams shook her head in amazement, tears welling up in her eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Carter," she said sincerely. "We don't know what to say. Thank you for standing up for Marcus when no one else would." "It's my responsibility," Elijah replied simply. "If I expect my employees to treat customers with respect and fairness, then I need to lead by example. Today, we clearly fell short, and I won't tolerate that." With that, he motioned for a nearby supervisor, who quickly approached upon seeing Elijah. The supervisor looked visibly nervous, likely recognizing the CEO's presence. Elijah handed over the torn pieces of the ticket and gave clear instructions. "Reissue this passenger's ticket immediately," he said firmly, "and find seats for him and his grandmother in first class. No excuses." "Yes, sir," the supervisor replied hastily, scurrying off to carry out the order. As they waited, Elijah crouched down again to speak directly to Marcus. "You handled yourself very well back there," he said with a small smile. "It takes courage to stay calm when things feel unfair. Don't ever forget that." Marcus blushed, feeling a mix of pride and relief wash over him. For the first time that day, he felt seen, not just as a child, but as someone worthy of respect. Little did Marcus realize, however, that Elijah wasn't just helping him because he was the CEO of the airline. There was another reason, one that would soon become clear. As they prepared to board the plane, Elijah glanced at Marcus thoughtfully, silently acknowledging the connection between them. But for now, the focus remained on ensuring Marcus reached his destination safely and with dignity restored. As the supervisor scrambled to reissue Marcus's ticket and arrange first-class seating, Elijah Carter turned his attention back to the flight attendant who had caused the entire ordeal. His expression was calm but firm, radiating a quiet authority that made her visibly uneasy. "Miss Jennings," Elijah said, addressing her by name after glancing at her badge, "do you mind explaining your actions to me?" The flight attendant, Miss Jennings, looked startled, her face pale as she realized who was speaking to her. She stammered, clearly caught off guard. Mr. Carter. I didn't realize it was you asterisk." Her voice trailed off as if hoping this revelation might somehow excuse her behavior. Elijah raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "That's irrelevant," he replied coolly. "What matters is how you treated that young boy. Would you care to explain why you tore up his ticket without verifying its validity?" Ms. Jennings hesitated, glancing nervously at the growing number of passengers watching the scene unfold. Finally, she spoke, her tone defensive. "Sir, I thought the ticket looked suspicious. It was crumpled, and I assumed it wasn't legitimate. I was just following protocol." Ms. Jennings opened her mouth to respond but quickly closed it again, unable to find words that would justify her actions. By now, the crowd around them had grown larger. Passengers whispered among themselves, some nodding in agreement with Elijah's words while others recorded the confrontation on their phones. A few even applauded softly when Elijah emphasized the importance of treating all customers with dignity. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Miss Jennings tried to salvage what little pride she had left. "I'm sorry, Mr. Carter," she said quickly, her voice trembling. "It won't happen again. Please, give me another chance." Elijah studied her for a moment, his piercing gaze making her shift uncomfortably under his scrutiny. Finally, he responded, "Apologies are important, but they aren't enough. Actions speak louder than words. From this moment forward, consider yourself suspended pending further investigation. We will review your conduct and determine appropriate next steps." Ms. Jennings gasped, her eyes widening in shock. "Suspended? But sir, please, I have bills to pay. My family depends on me." "I understand life can be challenging," Elijah said evenly, cutting her off. "But so can dealing with unfair treatment from someone in your position. Imagine if that boy had been traveling alone without his grandmother, or worse, if he hadn't encountered me today. How do you think he would have felt then? Lost? Helpless? Betrayed by the very system meant to protect him?" His words struck a nerve, not just with Ms. Jennings but also with those listening nearby. Several passengers nodded solemnly, recognizing the deeper implications of what had happened. It wasn't just about one torn ticket. It was about accountability, fairness, and ensuring everyone received equal treatment. With nothing more to say, Elijah motioned for a nearby supervisor to escort Ms. Jennings away. As she walked off, head bowed in shame, the murmurs among the crowd grew louder. Some expressed sympathy for her predicament, while others agreed she deserved the consequences of her actions. Once the immediate issue was resolved, Elijah returned to Marcus and his grandmother, who were waiting patiently near the boarding area. The supervisor had already handed over new tickets and confirmed their upgraded seats in first class. "Everything is taken care of," Elijah announced with a reassuring smile. "You'll be seated comfortably for your journey. And don't worry, this won't happen again." Mrs. Adams clasped her hands together, tears of gratitude welling up in her eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Carter. You've done more than we could have hoped for." Marcus looked up at Elijah, still processing everything that had transpired. For the first time since arriving at the airport, he felt a sense of justice, not just for himself, but for anyone else who might face similar treatment in the future. Little did Marcus know, however, that Elijah's involvement in his life was far from over. As they prepared to board the plane, Elijah glanced down at the boy once more, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. There was something familiar about Marcus, something that hinted at a connection neither of them fully understood yet. But for now, Elijah focused on ensuring Marcus reached his destination safely, leaving the bigger revelations for another day. As the boarding process resumed, Elijah Carter escorted Marcus and his grandmother to the front of the line. Passengers stepped aside respectfully, some nodding in approval as they recognized the CEO's presence. The tension from earlier had begun to ease, replaced by a sense of resolution and quiet admiration for how Elijah handled the situation. Before handing over their tickets to the gate agent, Elijah turned to Marcus with a warm smile. "First class is waiting for you," he said, his voice kind but firm. "You deserve nothing less after what happened today." Marcus looked up at him, still processing everything. "Thank you, Mr. Carter," he replied softly, his voice tinged with gratitude. For the first time since arriving at the airport, he felt seen, not just as a boy who'd been wronged, but as someone important enough to warrant care and attention. Elijah knelt down slightly to meet Marcus's gaze. "Listen carefully, son," he began, his tone gentle but deliberate. "Sometimes, people make mistakes, big ones, or act unfairly because they don't take the time to understand others. What Ms. Jennings did was wrong, but it doesn't define you. Don't let her actions make you doubt your worth." Marcus nodded slowly, absorbing Elijah's words. Though he didn't fully grasp the depth of the advice yet, he could feel its weight. It was comforting to hear someone so powerful speak to him with such sincerity. Mrs. Adams, standing nearby, wiped away a tear. "Mr. Carter, I can't thank you enough for stepping in," she said earnestly. "This means more to us than you know." With that, Elijah handed their tickets to the gate agent, who welcomed them aboard with an extra measure of politeness. As Marcus and his grandmother made their way down the jet bridge, Elijah lingered for a moment, watching them disappear into the cabin. His expression softened, revealing a flicker of emotion that hinted at something deeper, a connection he wasn't quite ready to reveal. Once settled in their plush first-class seats, Marcus couldn't help but marvel at the turn of events. The spacious leather chairs, complimentary snacks, and attentive staff seemed like a world apart from the chaos they'd faced at the gate. Even Mrs. Adams relaxed visibly, leaning back in her seat with a contented sigh. Marcus nodded, though his thoughts drifted back to Elijah. There was something about the way the CEO looked at him, something familiar, almost protective, that left him wondering. Was it just kindness, or was there more to it? As the plane taxied down the runway, Elijah returned to the gate area to address the remaining passengers. Standing near the entrance, he cleared his throat to get everyone's attention. The crowd quieted, curious about what he might say next. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elijah began, his voice steady and sincere, "I want to take a moment to apologize on behalf of Skyline Airlines for what occurred here today. What happened to that young boy should not have happened, not under my watch, and certainly not under any circumstances." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "We pride ourselves on providing exceptional service to all our passengers, regardless of age, background, or appearance. Unfortunately, today we failed to live up to that promise, but I assure you, this will serve as a wake-up call for us to do better." Passengers exchanged approving nods, some even applauding softly. One woman called out, "Thank you for stepping in, Mr. Carter. We need more leaders like you." Elijah acknowledged the compliment with a slight bow of his head. "Thank you for your support," he replied graciously. "But true leadership means holding ourselves accountable when we fall short, and that's exactly what we're going to do." He concluded his brief speech by reiterating the airline's commitment to improving customer service and ensuring fairness across the board. By the time he finished, the mood at the gate had shifted entirely. Passengers boarded the plane with renewed trust, reassured by Elijah's transparency and resolve. Back on the plane, Marcus gazed out the window as the aircraft climbed higher into the sky. The clouds stretched endlessly below, painting a picture of freedom and possibility. For the first time since the incident, he allowed himself to feel hopeful, not just about reaching his father, but about the lessons he'd learned along the way. Unbeknownst to him, Elijah watched the plane take off from the terminal window, his mind swirling with thoughts. He knew this incident would spark change within the company, but it also stirred something personal within him, a memory, long buried, resurfaced, a reminder of why moments like these mattered so deeply. For now, however, Elijah focused on the bigger picture, turning a painful experience into an opportunity for growth, not just for Skyline Airlines, but for himself and the countless lives affected by his decisions. The flight soared smoothly through the clouds, its engines humming softly as Marcus gazed out the window. Below him, the world seemed distant and small, a patchwork of green fields and winding rivers stretching endlessly toward the horizon. But despite the breathtaking view, his mind kept drifting back to the events at the airport. The confrontation with the flight attendant, Elijah Carter's intervention, and the whirlwind of emotions that followed. It all felt like pieces of a puzzle he was still trying to put together. Mrs. Adams noticed her grandson's quiet demeanor and leaned closer, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "You've been awfully quiet, sweetheart," she said softly. "What's on your mind?" Marcus hesitated for a moment before responding. "I just keep thinking about what Mr. Carter said, about how people sometimes make judgments without really understanding others." His grandmother nodded thoughtfully. "But why would anyone treat someone badly just because they look different or seem younger?" Marcus asked, his voice tinged with frustration. "It doesn't make sense." Mrs. Adams sighed, her expression softening. "Sometimes, people act out of fear or ignorance. They might not mean to hurt others, but their actions can still cause harm. That's why kindness and patience are so important. They help us bridge those gaps." As they spoke, the flight attendant assigned to first class approached them with a warm smile. She introduced herself as Lisa and offered them refreshments. Unlike Ms. Jennings, Lisa exuded warmth and professionalism, taking extra care to ensure Marcus and his grandmother were comfortable. Her demeanor reminded Marcus that not everyone in the airline industry was like the woman who had torn his ticket. When Lisa moved on to assist other passengers, Marcus turned to his grandmother again. "Do you think Ms. Jennings will lose her job?" he asked quietly. "It's hard to say, sweetheart," Mrs. Adams replied honestly. "She made a big mistake, and she'll have to face the consequences. But maybe this will teach her to be more careful and kinder in the future." Marcus nodded slowly, considering her words. He didn't feel anger toward Ms. Jennings anymore, just sadness that such a misunderstanding could escalate so quickly. Deep down, he hoped she would learn from the experience and become better at her job. Meanwhile, thousands of feet below, Elijah Carter sat in his office at the airport, reflecting on the day's events. After addressing the passengers and ensuring Marcus and his grandmother were settled comfortably on the plane, Elijah had returned to his desk to draft an urgent memo to senior management. The incident weighed heavily on his mind, not only because of its impact on Marcus, but also because it highlighted systemic issues within the company. Elijah picked up his pen and began writing. Asterisk, to all Skyline Airlines staff, asterisk. Asterisk, today, I witnessed an unacceptable breach of conduct involving one of our employees. A young boy named Marcus arrived at the gate with a valid ticket, only to have it torn up by a flight attendant who failed to verify its authenticity. This behavior is not reflective of the values we strive to uphold as a company, asterisk. Asterisk, while accountability measures will be taken against the individual involved, this incident serves as a reminder that policies alone cannot guarantee fairness and respect. These qualities must come from within each of us, from our willingness to listen, learn, and treat every passenger with dignity, regardless of their age, appearance, or background, asterisk. Asterisk, moving forward, I am implementing mandatory training sessions for all staff members on empathy, bias awareness, and conflict resolution. Additionally, I am establishing a new customer feedback system to ensure incidents like this are reported and addressed promptly, asterisk. Asterisk, let this serve as a call to action for all of us. Together, we can create an environment where every passenger feels valued and respected, asterisk. Asterisk, sincerely, asterisk. Asterisk, Elijah Carter, asterisk. Asterisk, CEO, Skyline Airlines, asterisk. As he signed the memo, Elijah felt a renewed sense of purpose. Running an airline wasn't just about planes and schedules. It was about people. Each passenger carried their own story, dreams, and struggles. It was his responsibility to ensure they felt safe and cared for during their journey. Back on the plane, Marcus continued staring out the window, lost in thought. His grandmother's words echoed in his mind. Asterisk, kindness bridges gaps, asterisk. Though the day had started with disappointment and tears, it ended with lessons about resilience, justice, and the power of standing up for what's right. Unbeknownst to Marcus, Elijah's connection to him went beyond being the CEO of Skyline Airlines. As the plane soared higher into the sky, both Elijah and Marcus shared a quiet hope that today's challenges would pave the way for a brighter tomorrow, not just for themselves, but for everyone touched by their stories. By the time the plane touched down at its destination, news of the incident had already begun to spread. A few passengers who witnessed the confrontation at the gate took to social media, sharing their accounts of what happened. Some praised Elijah Carter for his swift intervention, while others criticized the airline for allowing such behavior in the first place. The hashtag Skyline accountability started trending online, sparking debates about customer service, bias, and corporate responsibility. Elijah was well aware of the growing buzz. As he sat in a conference room with senior management later that day, he couldn't ignore the weight of public scrutiny resting on Skyline Airlines. But instead of viewing it as a crisis, he saw it as an opportunity, a chance to rebuild trust and strengthen the company's values. Let's be clear, Elijah began, addressing the team gathered around the table. What happened today wasn't just one employee's mistake. It reflects deeper issues within our processes and culture. We failed Marcus, we failed his grandmother, and we failed every passenger who expects fairness and respect when they fly with us. The executives exchanged uneasy glances, knowing full well that Elijah wasn't someone who tolerated excuses. He expected action, and fast. We need to hold ourselves accountable, Elijah continued, his tone firm but measured. Starting now, I want every department to review their protocols. How do we verify tickets? How do we handle disputes? And most importantly, how do we ensure no passenger feels dismissed or disrespected? One of the managers raised a tentative hand. Sir, are you suggesting we overhaul our entire training program? Elijah nodded. Exactly. Our current system isn't cutting it. From now on, all staff members, whether they're flight attendants, gate agents, or supervisors, will undergo mandatory workshops on empathy, diversity awareness, and conflict resolution. These aren't optional extras, they're essential skills for anyone working in customer service. Another executive spoke up hesitantly. But won't this require significant resources? Training thousands of employees won't come cheap. It'll cost far more if we lose the trust of our customers, Elijah replied sharply. Investing in our people is investing in our future. If we don't get this right, we risk damaging not only our reputation but also the lives of those who rely on us for safe and respectful travel. With the meeting adjourned, Elijah turned his attention to drafting a public statement. He knew transparency was key to regaining trust, so he decided to address the issue head-on. Sitting at his desk, he carefully crafted a message that acknowledged the airline's shortcomings while outlining concrete steps for improvement. Later that evening, Elijah released the statement online. Asterisk, to our valued customers, asterisk. Asterisk, today, we fell short of the high standards we set for ourselves at Skyline Airlines. A young passenger named Marcus arrived at the gate with a valid ticket, only to have it torn up by a member of our staff without proper verification. This act of unprofessionalism is unacceptable and does not reflect the values we strive to uphold. Asterisk. Asterisk, while disciplinary action will be taken against the individual involved, we recognize that accountability goes beyond one person. This incident has highlighted areas where we must improve, from ticket verification procedures to staff training programs. To address these gaps, we are implementing the following measures. Asterisk. Asterisk. Mandatory empathy and bias awareness training for all employees. Asterisk. Asterisk. Enhanced ticket checking protocols to prevent similar errors. Asterisk. Asterisk. A new feedback system enabling passengers to report concerns directly to senior management. Asterisk. Asterisk. We owe it to our customers to provide safe, respectful, and enjoyable travel experiences. Today's events remind us that there is always room for growth, and we are committed to doing better, for Marcus, for his family, and for everyone who chooses to fly with us. Asterisk. Asterisk, sincerely, asterisk. Asterisk, Elijah Carter. Asterisk. Asterisk, CEO, Skyline Airlines. Asterisk. Within hours, the statement went viral. Passengers flooded comment sections, praising Elijah's leadership and honesty. Advocacy groups commended Skyline for taking immediate action, while industry experts noted that the company's response set a benchmark for accountability in corporate settings. Meanwhile, Marcus landed safely and reunited with his father, who greeted him with a warm hug. As they drove home, Marcus recounted the day's events, describing everything from the torn ticket to Elijah's intervention. His father listened intently, his expression softening as he realized how much his son had endured. You know, his father said thoughtfully, this experience might feel tough now, but it's teaching you something important. How to stand strong when life isn't fair. And sometimes, standing strong means speaking up, not just for yourself, but for others too. Months passed and life began to settle back into a rhythm for Marcus and his family. The incident at the airport was no longer a fresh wound, but a memory that had shaped him in profound ways. Yet every time he thought about it, Marcus couldn't help but smile. What had started as a day filled with embarrassment and frustration had turned into something far greater, a lesson in resilience, justice, and the importance of standing up for what's right. One crisp morning, Marcus found himself back at the same airport, this time preparing to visit his father again. As he walked through the bustling terminal with his grandmother, he noticed subtle changes everywhere. Staff members greeted passengers warmly, their smiles genuine and inviting. Information desks were staffed by friendly agents ready to assist anyone in need. Even the signs posted around the gates emphasized respect, inclusivity, and care. I've been great, thank you, Marcus replied, grinning from ear to ear. He felt a sense of pride knowing that Lisa remembered him, not just as another passenger, but as someone whose experience mattered. As they boarded the plane, Marcus noticed another change. a small plaque near the entrance dedicated to "Our Commitment to You." It outlined Skyline Airlines' new values: empathy, accountability, and excellence, and included a quote attributed to Elijah Carter: "Every passenger deserves to feel valued, respected, and cared for." Asterisk. Seated comfortably in first class once more, Marcus gazed out the window, marveling at how different things felt now. Gone was the anxiety and uncertainty he'd experienced before. In its place was confidence, an unshakable belief that people could grow and change when given the chance. The transformation wasn't limited to the airline alone. News of Elijah's reforms had sparked conversations across industries, inspiring other companies to adopt similar practices. Advocacy groups praised Skyline Airlines as a model for corporate accountability, while customers reported improved experiences during their travels. Social media posts tagged #Skyline accountability shifted from criticism to praise, highlighting stories of kindness and professionalism. But perhaps the most meaningful impact was felt within Marcus himself. The boy who had once stood frozen and humiliated at the gate had grown into someone braver and wiser. His father often reminded him that adversity could be a teacher if approached with the right mindset. "You handled yourself beautifully that day," his dad would say. Not everyone can stay calm and composed when faced with unfairness. For Marcus, the journey wasn't just about overcoming one bad experience. It was about learning to carry those lessons forward. At school, he became an advocate for fairness, speaking up whenever he saw someone treated unjustly. His classmates admired his courage, and teachers praised his maturity. Little by little, Marcus realized that his voice mattered, and that using it could make a difference. Meanwhile, Elijah Carter continued leading Skyline Airlines with the same determination that had driven him months earlier. Though busy overseeing operations and implementing reforms, he kept a close eye on feedback from passengers and employees alike. Every positive review reinforced his belief that change was possible, and every constructive critique reminded him there was still work to be done. One evening, as Elijah reviewed reports in his office, he came across a letter addressed to him. It was written by none other than Marcus's grandmother, Mrs. Adams. Her words brought tears to his eyes. "Dear Mr. Carter, I wanted to thank you once again for everything you did for my grandson. That day at the airport changed Marcus in ways I never expected. He's more confident, kinder, and determined to stand up for others. Your actions didn't just fix a problem, they inspired hope and growth in all of us. Please know that your leadership has made a lasting impact, not only on our family but on countless others who travel with Skyline Airlines. Thank you for being the kind of person we can look up to. Sincerely, Mrs. Adams. Elijah folded the letter carefully and placed it in his desk drawer, where he kept reminders of why his work mattered. For him, it wasn't just about running a successful airline. It was about creating a legacy of compassion and integrity. As the plane carrying Marcus soared high above the clouds, the young boy leaned back in his seat, dreaming of the future. Someday, he hoped to follow in Elijah's footsteps, not just as a leader but as someone who believed in justice, fairness, and the power of second chances. And somewhere below, Elijah watched another flight take off, feeling a quiet satisfaction. The sky stretched endlessly ahead, symbolizing endless possibilities. For Marcus, for Skyline Airlines, and for everyone willing to embrace change and strive for better tomorrows.